Today, we're going to dive into one of the most fascinating puzzles in the entire Bible. It's the story of a genuinely righteous king, a guy who did everything right, but whose story ends with this really troubling question mark. We're going to investigate the reign of King Jotham.
And this, right here, is the central mystery we're exploring. I mean, how can a nation have perfect leadership, be strong, be secure, and yet the hearts of its people stay so stubbornly broken? Let's figure this out. Okay, so our investigation starts in the book of 2 Chronicles. This is where we meet the main character in our story, King Jotham. And his story, well, it presents a puzzle that has had people scratching their heads for centuries.
You know, when you read through the long line of kings in the Old Testament, finding one who is consistently described as doing what was right, well, that's pretty rare. Jotham of Judah is one of those rare exceptions. He really stands out as a genuinely good leader.
And boom, right there, in the first couple of verses of his story in 2 Chronicles chapter 27, the whole paradox is laid out for us. It says, he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. But then there's that big catch. But the people were still corrupt. His goodness didn't just rub off on everyone else. His personal integrity couldn't fix the nation's problems. And that is the puzzle we need to solve.
So to really understand what happened, we've got to first look at the evidence for Jotham's good leadership. And believe it or not, it all starts with what he learned from his own father's catastrophic mistake.
Okay, so what's so interesting here is the stark contrast. Jotham's father, King Uzziah, got incredibly proud. At the peak of his power, he storms into the holy temple to do something only the priests were allowed to do. And for that arrogant power grab, he was struck with leprosy. Now Jotham saw this happen. He learned a powerful lesson. There are some lines you just do not cross.
Now this tiny little phrase from 2 Chronicles, it's so important. It doesn't mean Jotham was slacking on his worship. No way. It means he had this profound respect, this holy fear. He understood that his job as king was totally different from the priest's job. Unlike his dad, he respected God's order. And this was seen as a huge mark of his wisdom.
So instead of going inside the temple to try and control it, Jotham went outside and built up its defenses. He focused on his actual job, being a protector. He beefed up the Ophel wall, which was a critical defense for Jerusalem, and made sure the entire nation was safe from enemy threats. This guy was a competent, wise, and responsible ruler.
And this just brings us right back to our mystery, doesn't it? If the leader is doing everything right, and the nation is safe and doing well, where is all this corruption coming from? The problem clearly wasn't coming from the outside. It had to be something deeper, something on the inside. So to solve this, we need to shift our investigation from the king's actions to the people's hearts. And lucky for us, there was a key witness on the scene who tells us exactly what was going on.
Right. These are the big questions. What did this corruption actually look like day to day? And why couldn't a good king's influence do anything to stop it?
This is where the prophet Isaiah comes in. He started his ministry in the exact year that Jotham's dad died and Jotham's reign began. So he was our man on the ground, an eyewitness to the spiritual decay that was bubbling just beneath the surface of the seemingly perfect kingdom. His words are basically the prosecutor's evidence file.
So here's Exhibit A from Isaiah chapter 1. The people were still showing up to the temple. They were offering sacrifices, going through all the religious motions. But God, speaking through Isaiah, says it's all completely meaningless. He says, "Your countless sacrifices, what are they to me? You trample my courts." Wow, their worship was just a performance, totally disconnected from their hearts.
And here is Exhibit B from Isaiah chapter 5. The nation was booming economically, but that prosperity had basically become a poison. Isaiah calls out the rich who were just gobbling up land, exploiting the poor, and living in total luxury while ignoring justice. He says, "Woe to you who add house to house and join field to field." Their material comfort had made them spiritually numb.
And this might be the most damning evidence of all, from Isaiah chapter 6. God tells Isaiah that the people have become willfully blind and deaf. He says, "Be ever hearing, but never understanding. Be ever seeing, but never perceiving." Think about that. They could hear God's truth, but they just refused to get it. They could see what was happening around them, but they refused to see what it all meant. Their hearts had just become hard.
So with all the evidence from our eyewitness, Isaiah, on the table, we can finally make a diagnosis for what was truly wrong in Jotham's kingdom. The Bible actually has a term for this condition that gets right to the heart of the issue. It's often called total depravity. Now, that doesn't mean that people are as absolutely evil as they could possibly be. What it means is that this corruption, this brokenness, it affects every part of us, our minds, our desires, our emotions, so deeply that we can't fix ourselves. Even with a perfect king and perfect circumstances, the sickness is still there.
So the final verdict is in. King Jotham didn't fail because he was a bad leader. His story is meant to show us the limits of even the best human leadership. He proves that you can fix the politics, you can build the walls, you can secure the borders, but you can't perform surgery on the human soul.
But the story doesn't just end there in despair. Actually, the failure of the best possible earthly king is designed to make us look for a different kind of king altogether, one who can offer the real solution.
You see, the entire point of Jotham's story is to be a giant signpost. It's showing us that what humanity really needs isn't just a better political system or a more inspiring leader. We need a rescue that comes from completely outside of us, from a king who can do what no earthly king could ever do.
And this is the incredible promise that's woven all through the Bible. Jotham could build stone walls, but he couldn't fix stone hearts. Centuries later, the prophet Ezekiel, in chapter 36, talked about a new king, a Messiah, who would come and perform a divine heart transplant. God promises through him, "I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh." This, of course, is the work of Jesus Christ.
And this ancient story is so incredibly relevant, it's almost scary. We really have to ask ourselves these hard questions. Is our own religious activity sometimes just trampling courts? A Sunday routine with no real change in our hearts? Has our pursuit of comfort and prosperity become a kind of spiritual anesthetic, just numbing us to the deeper truths? Are our screens, our social media feeds, our 24/7 news cycles making us ever seeing, but never truly perceiving?
So, Jotham's story leaves us with this final, crucial question. He did his best. He built a wall to protect a physical building. But the real temple, the human heart, was crumbling from the inside. His story forces us to look beyond all the human solutions and ask, who really has the power to rebuild us from the inside out?